At least 2 explosions have been reported at Kabul airport, killing over 110,000 people as the situation in Afghanistan escalates. Colombia's National Strike Committee led mobilizations this Thursday against the government's new tax reform bill and to call on Congress to approve 10 alternative bills to benefit the population. Indian farmers began the first of a 2-day convention on Thursday, focused on the ongoing protests against the 3 agriculture laws that threaten their livelihoods. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. The situation in Afghanistan escalates with 2 blasts attributed to suicide bombers at Kabul airport, which came following warnings from foreign powers intervening in the country. There have also been reports of more blasts from several foreign correspondents. Over 110 are now reported to have been killed and hundreds more injured. The Pentagon first confirmed a blast outside of the Hamid Karzai airport after Western governments warned of a security threat and began halting evacuation flights. A U.S. military official confirms that at least 1 explosion had occurred at Abbey Gate, a main entry point to the airport, leaving several civilians dead, among them U.S. citizens. Early reports indicated that the explosion was caused by at least 1 suicide bomber wearing an explosive vest. Russia's foreign ministry later confirmed a 2nd explosion in the vicinity. The attacks are being blamed on an ISIS-affiliated group by Western powers and come precisely when several foreign governments were pressuring to keep the troops in the country beyond the deadline agreed with the Taliban. Pentagon sources and international media outlets point to the Islamic State affiliate in Afghanistan known as the Islamic State Khorasan Province, or ISIS-K, as the prime suspect for the suicide bombings at Kabul airport. AFP news agency reported that the group had claimed responsibility for the deadly bomb attacks. The news is a blow to the Taliban, as it could serve as a further justification for ongoing foreign intervention based on the supposed terror threat that has been repeated for the past 20 years. In a tweet, Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid condemned the deadly blast outside Kabul airport. The tweet also highlighted that the explosion took place in an area where United States forces are responsible for security. The Taliban does not have control of the Kabul airport, which is being operated by foreign powers, mainly the U.S. And the U.S. President Joe Biden offered remarks from the White House on Thursday afternoon after the explosions at Kabul's international airport. Biden reported on the U.S. service members killed, calling them heroes. He said the U.S. has an obligation to continue fighting terror. His message to those responsible for the attacks was, "We will hunt you down and make you pay." Biden sought to lay blame with the Taliban for the situation, despite the fact that the U.S. had intelligence on security threats and is responsible for security at the airport. But he also sought to differentiate between the Taliban and the ISIS, which has claimed responsibility for the attacks. Biden also pledged to continue evacuations by the established deadline. And in response to the questions from reporters about whether the U.S. should remain on Afghan soil, he laid blame for the swift exit with former President Donald Trump. After the latest events in Afghanistan, several Western countries ended the airlifting process in a rush to take home its citizens. Meanwhile, the U.S. conducts its evacuations at a slow pace. Sweden has ended its evacuation mission in Kabul, taking home about 1,100, as informed by the Foreign Minister Ann Linde, she said. Since August 13th, British forces evacuated close to 14,000 people, including 7,975 under the Afghan relocations and assistance scheme for those who work with the UK during the war. Around 300 German citizens remain in Afghanistan, according to the Foreign Office in Berlin, one day after the German military ended its evacuation flights from Kabul. Berlin has identified 10,000 Afghans in need of protection who are eligible for traveling to Germany. Also, almost 5,000 people have been evacuated from Kabul by the Italian military after the fall of the Afghan capital. For its part, around 12,500 people were evacuated from Afghanistan by the U.S. forces on Thursday, raising the total evacuees since the Taliban took power on August 14th to over 100,000. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the bombings at Kabul airport and called for a meeting of the permanent members of the Security Council to discuss the chaotic situation in Afghanistan on Monday.
Well, I'd like to express in the strongest possible way my total condemnation about the horrific terrorist attack in Kabul. To send my condolences to the families of all those that perished, Afghans, and those that were helping there, the Afghans, and died serving the lives of others. I have also asked my special representative to convey directly to Kabul my deep condolences to the Afghan people.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Social movements in Colombia, led by the National Strike Committee, mobilized on Thursday against the government's new tax reform bill. Protest leaders stressed that the measures includes a freeze on public employees' salaries for 10 years. The president of the Central Union of Workers, Francisco Maltés, explains that this Thursday's mobilizations were also in support of 10 bills related to health, free education, a basic income, warranties for the right to protest, and police reform, which were proposed by the National Strike Committee following the mass demonstrations held in rejection of the first tax reform proposal. Demonstrators also demand an end to the violence in the country, with the ongoing massacres of social, community, and trade union leaders, and also the killings of signatories to the 2016 peace accords.
We want to appeal to the Congress of the Republic so that they process the 10 bills we submitted on July 27th in the Congress, with the support of over 50 senators, and of course, to express our absolute rejection to the tax reform that intends to freeze the salaries of public employees for 10 years, and to conduct a labor massacre through the government's powers to create and suppress entities.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has called on the United States government to invest in Central America as a way to stop waves of migration. He stressed that the situation at the Mexico-U.S. border cannot go on forever after the U.S. Supreme Court reactivated the remaining Mexico immigration policy.
We are trying to help by keeping migrants in shelters, especially by protecting minors, women. But this cannot go on forever. We have to go to the bottom line, and that means investing in the development of poor peoples. We have set out to help the U.S. government, and we will continue to do so on the migration issue.
In Peru, President Pedro Castillo's cabinet choices face a vote of confidence in the Congress. Analysts stress that the rejection of Castillo's picks could potentially throw the country into yet another political crisis. If lawmakers deny a vote of confidence twice to the same government, the Constitution gives the president the power to dissolve Congress and to call new extraordinary parliamentary elections. Castillo has already faced opposition to several of his nominees, with his choice for Foreign Minister Héctor Béjar resigning in the face of claims of his links to the Shining Path rebel group in his youth. Prime Minister Guido Bellido appeared in Congress along with the other members of the executive team, where he outlined the government's plans to lift Peru out of one of the most grave political, social, environmental and health crises of recent decades, and also appealed to rival parties to set aside their differences to work together for the nation's well-being. And thousands of Peruvians gathered outside the Congress as they awaited the vote of President Pedro Castillo's cabinet.
Of radicalism in the sense that we really want all the problems of Peru to be removed from the root. So we have a lot of hope and we are going to mobilize because the people have won, and in that sense it is very democratic. We are in favor because it is the authentic representation of the people through that cabinet.
We want a change in the constitution, gentlemen. We want all the law to be clear, and for the Peruvian people, that is what we want.
And now we address other topics. Hurricane watches were issued for several Gulf Coast states as Tropical Storm Ida moved towards the southern United States, with forecasters warning it could rapidly strengthen into one of the strongest storms of the Atlantic hurricane season. According to the National Hurricane Center, storm surge will raise water levels by as much as 1 to almost 2 meters above normal tide levels in areas of onshore winds along of the immediate coast of the island of Youth and near and to the east of where the center crosses the coast of western Cuba. Near the coast, the surge will be accompanied by large and destructive waves. Tropical storm conditions are also expected in the Cayman Islands and are expected to reach the island of Youth and portions of western Cuba in the warning area on Friday. This depression is expected to produce heavy rainfall across the Cayman Islands and western Cuba, including the Isle of Youth. And we'll remain on topic. Tropical storm Nora, formed over the Pacific Ocean on August 25th, is moving northwest over the California Peninsula. On Friday, its center was 440 kilometers south-southwest of Acapulco City, western Mexico, with maximum sustained winds of 80 kilometers per hour. Nora will continue northwest, passing very close to the southwestern and western coast of Mexico on August 27th and 28th. After that, it could approach the southern portion of Baja California on Sunday. Heavy rains and strong winds are forecast over coastal sections of the Mexican states of Oaxaca, Guerrero, Michoacán, Colima, and Jalisco. The government of Venezuela continues to assist communities affected by the heavy rains reported in several states of the country, which have resulted in the deaths of at least 20 people. Our correspondent in Venezuela, Leonel Retamal, brings us more details of the devastation caused by the heavy rains.
The government decreed a state of emergency in the western state of Merida, following flooding and landslides as a result of the rainfall. More than 800 houses were affected and 100 were totally destroyed, affecting more than 400 families. The Andean state is the epicenter of the weather emergency in Venezuela. The Simón Bolívar Humanitarian Task Force, which has provided support in Latin America in the event of volcanic eruptions, earthquakes and other natural disasters, is already in the area. The same task force used by our Commander-in-Chief to support Latin America and the Caribbean, that same task force is deployed to guarantee the security and well-being of the Venezuelan people. With specialized personnel in search and rescue operations, vehicles, ambulances, and communications, the whole Venezuelan state is deployed. In the western state of Yaracuy, the Yurubi River, which flows through the city of San Felipe, the provincial capital, overflowed and damages were reported in the water treatment plant, which, according to authorities of the Ministry of Public Work, could take up to 2 weeks to become operative again. Bridges collapsed in the state of Zulia in the west of the country, where authorities activated a plan for the transfer and rescue of people who were isolated. With the help of the Bolivarian National Guard, while the debris removal and power supply plants continue, dams, that could collapse if precipitation levels remain high are being monitored. We will begin the process to evacuate sick people, adults and children in order to assist the different sectors that were cut off. In Apure State, on the border with Colombia, water drainage systems collapsed due to the rains, and rivers overflowed across this region of the Central Flatlands. Alert, monitoring and relief actions continue throughout the country, while Venezuelan authorities reported a 65% increase in rainfall to date. 75 tropical waves are expected to hit the Caribbean nation by September.
Thank you, Lionel, for your report, and we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Indian farmers began the first of a two-day convention on Thursday, focused on the ongoing protest against 3 agricultural laws that threaten not only their livelihoods, but the country's food security. The All India Convention marks 9 months of protests, which have seen hundreds of thousands of Indian agricultural workers mobilize against the laws. After 10 rounds of talks, the government has failed to meet the sector's demands. 1,500 delegates from 22 states, representing 300 farmer and agricultural workers' unions and associations, 18 All India trade unions, 9 women's organizations, and 17 student and youth organizations are participating in the convention, where they are set to discuss future strategies for the ongoing protest. Authorities in the Ivory Coast, which detected a case of Ebola in the city of Abidjan in mid-August, have assured that their country is safe from possible new cases.
Today we are safe from new cases, but we have to monitor this. We have been able to vaccinate more than 1,000 people. Soon we will use up to 1,200 doses we received. So it is not only the medical staff who received the girl. It's the contacts who made the trip, the people who welcomed her, but also at the border where she passed. All those who could have interactions with this lady were vaccinated.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned of a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Ethiopia's Tigray region as the conflict reaches the neighboring regions of Amhara and Afar.
Which started some 10 months ago in the northern region of Tigray is spreading. And the level of human suffering is growing, with serious political, economic and humanitarian implications for Ethiopia and the broader region. All parties must recognize a simple truth. There is no military solution. The human price of this war is mounting by the day. A humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding before our eyes. More than 2 million people have been displaced from their homes, and million more are in immediate need of life-saving humanitarian assistance, including food, water, shelter, and health care. At least 400,000 people are living in famine-like conditions. The military...
And now we address other topics. A medical oxygen production plant has been started up at a Cuban air base in cooperation with Russian experts as the country seeks to ensure supplies in the midst of the COVID-19 surge. At the San Antonio de los Baños Air Base, the Army has started up 2 oxygen production plants, an effort which Russia has joined with the donation of a plant capable of producing around 120 oxygen cylinders per day. The machinery was installed in the record time with the help of Russian technicians. After being packaged, the oxygen cylinders are immediately transported to helicopters and planes that take them to different parts of the country. This is the latest effort at guaranteeing the availability of medical oxygen in the midst of Cuba's efforts to fight the pandemic.
We are receiving oxygen supply practically for 12 hours a day. We are transporting medical O2 to Santiago de Cuba twice a day, which gives us 12 hours of coverage, and we complete 24 hours. From the National Management Center, we need to continue supplying the medical O2 needed by the Carlos Manuel de Céspedes and the Manzanillo hospitals. We are helping people who have tested positive to COVID-19. There have been so many deaths these days. I am doing my military service in hospital services. It is my duty.
Currently, in the third wave of the pandemic, Guatemala's main hospitals have exceeded their capacity to treat COVID-19 patients in a serious condition. According to Deputy Minister of Hospitals, Francisco Goma, the impact of the serious, as bed capacity is at maximum. The government official also indicated that the solution does not lie in simply increasing the number of beds, but in managing human resources for each position. For their part, the directors of the San Juan de Dios and Roosevelt General Hospitals in the capital explains that the current situation in emergencies is very complex, as COVID-19 care consumes other areas and staff are at the limit.
Related with the presence of 5 different variants of COVID-19 in the country, we could have up to more than 2 million cases by October 11th, which is 4 times higher than on August 23rd.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.